I'm really excited to see all these people here. I've been fighting this disease for a long time, and I think we're at the point now with the public awareness of what's going on that we're really going to actually get something started on doing something about this. What I'm going to try to do is talk about the actual, what do we do with this stuff in the garden. Some people have asked me, why am I devoting so much of my time and energy and what all on fighting Rose Rosette disease? And I think maybe this can explain it more than anything. This is a picture of our garden pre-Rose Rosette disease. This is a picture of our garden taken Monday afternoon. You can see all the jack climbers are gone. This little bed, round bed in the middle has all been just replanted. Those are all new roses planted this year. So that's why I'm motivated to try to do something about this. We love roses, and I can't imagine gardens without roses, and we're not going to be able to grow roses until we get Rose Rosette disease under control. Basically, I challenged the Collin County Rose Society to do something proactive about Rose Rosette disease. I printed up that little flyer there, just a few copies of it. Started talking to the Rose Society. Dean Oswald at Chambersville got in touch with Dr. Church. He jumped on board and said that he was all behind some sort of an effort like that. And this was in November, and here we are today. The problem with the Rose Rosette disease is the tremendous proportion of infected roses that we have in the environment now around here. The disease moved in so fast on us. There are many parts of the country where it's existed for many, many years, and they've been dealing with rosette in a manageable way for many, many years. The problem here is when it moved in, people didn't recognize what the disease was, and the common practice just became to prune out this distorted growth that we got, and not realizing the danger of the infection of the virus in the plant and the ability of that to spread like wildfire. And that's what it did. We have a huge reserve now, a reservoir of infected roses, and we will not be able to get the situation to a manageable level until basically we just get rid of this huge reservoir of infected roses that we got. Each rose that's left in a garden out there is just a typhoid Mary that's going to just infect more and more roses from these mites, which can be in the area in the billions, as these mites hitchhike on insects, blow in the wind, go on your clothes, and it infests other roses. So what can we do? From a practical standpoint, we will never completely eliminate Rose Rosette disease, but we must quickly and drastically start reducing the number of plants that we got, and we won't be able to do anything about ever getting to a manageable stage unless we get that under control. Where are the problems? There are three types of gardens suffering with Rose Rosette disease. The disease is the same in all the gardens, but the way that we might want to deal with it is going to be different. We have the homeowner maintained private garden. This is the gardener that's got some roses in their backyard. We have commercial, large or small private gardens that are maintained professionally by the landscape professionals. And then we have municipal gardens. And we'll try to address each one of these independently. First of all, let's look at some of the things we know about it. When we know a little bit more about the disease, how it spread, and where it comes from, that's going to lead us to some logical conclusions about the best way of dealing with it. So we're going to kind of review maybe a little information that has already been presented this morning, but we'll try to put it in context of using this information to help us decide how we're going to deal with the problem. First of all is this eriophyid mite. This is a very common mite. It exists on roses today, has existed on our roses for many, many years, and Mike did a great job of talking about all the different kinds of mites, and they all typically have this characteristic of causing some sort of a deformation, a blister or a gall or a little witch's broom. And this is common with this mite. When the mite feeds on the plant, it actually at the same time injects a toxin into the plant. And this toxin is what produces that blister or that gall or some little deformed growth, which is actually a mechanism that, as he said, produces a better habitat for that mite. Basically, when it bites it, what it does is it disrupts the DNA and attacks the DNA, and that's why we get this mutant growth that we get. Okay, the mite is very small. We can't see it. It can't be seen with the naked eye. It's very hard to see with a hand lens if it's not more than 10 power. The mite is not very mobile when it crawls. You saw the pictures of it with the little bitty tiny legs. It can only crawl about 1 meter. If it lands on a plant, it's got to crawl within, it's got to find a place it can infect that plant within about 1 meter of where it lights on the plant. The mite is blown randomly in the wind, and it hitchhikes on clothing or on other insects. The Rose Rosette virus can live and multiply in the mite. This comes from Dr. Tzanetakis, who is the man at the University of Arkansas that actually isolated the Rose Rosette virus. The virus is vectored or carried by the mite from one rose to another. The mite is very host specific. This particular variety of mite will only feed on roses. It can't feed on your photinia, or it can't feed on any other plant. It's got to find a rose. If the mite can't find a rose, it cannot survive. The mites overwinter in the rose plant, burrow deep into the tissue of the plant. This is one of the reasons that it is difficult to deal with it with insecticides or miticides or surfactants. The mite will burrow into where it is totally inside the tissue of the plant. So the only time it's really practical to try to do anything about the mite from an insecticide or miticide is when it is traveling or is being blown and first attaches itself to a plant. The mites can survive very low temperatures. Rose Rosette disease is reported on up into Canada, so the mite definitely can survive very, very cold temperatures. In the springtime, when it warms up, the overwintering female emerges from under the bud scales where it's burrowed in, and it lays eggs. It feeds on the new budding rose when the bud break begins in the spring. This time is the best time if you're going to try to do any kind of a chemical control on the mite. As Mike mentioned, the reproduction is continuous. The generations completed every 2 to 3 weeks and overlapping generations. So there's a constant renewing of the population of these mites. Now let's talk about the roses a little bit. There's no variety of rose that has been approved to be resistant to Rose Rosette disease. We have a few roses that we hope may be resistant to it. I heard one mentioned this morning that we thought might be a candidate, and Dr. Church said he's found it on that rose, so that marks that one off the list. But hopefully there will be some variety found. The usefulness of that will be a breeding program. Dr. Byrne at College Station has a research grant and is doing work on that. He is a rose breeder, and his interest in attacking the problem is basically to try to develop new strains of roses that will be resistant to the disease. That's not going to happen in my lifetime. And so I'm looking at a more immediate solution to the problem. These eriophyid mites, when they feed on the rose, as I said, they actually suck out the juices, but they also inject toxins. And when they're injecting that toxin, if they're infected with the virus, they're also injecting the virus into the plant. The infected rose then becomes a source of infection for new mites, clean mites that may not have the virus in it yet, but when they bite into that infected rose, they themselves become infested, and this whole chain starts repeating itself. The virus will spread throughout the entire plant. Once the virus is in the plant, it will get systemically in the fluids of the plant, and it will travel down into the root system, back up through all of the other canes, and the entire rose plant, including the root system, will be infected. There's no proven way to protect a rose plant from getting Rose Rosette disease. Or you can try spraying these things, and many of us do. I do in a personal garden, but there is no research or documentation that this is effective. But sometimes you feel like you just got to try something instead of being just totally helpless. There's no way to kill the virus in an infected rose plant. There's no magic potion or whatever that you can spray the plant with or dip it with, or maybe other than a blowtorch. A rose plant infected with Rose Rosette disease will eventually die. The problem is it takes a long time for that to happen. Dr. Church talked about a rose at his church that's been there for 4 years. For 4 years, that rose has been sitting there putting off thousands and thousands of infected mites that have blown all over that part of town, and no telling how many rose plants have been infected from that one rose plant at that church, and he says they have hundreds of them. This, ladies and gentlemen, is our problem. We have to get rid of these reservoirs of infected roses. If we don't, we will never get this under control, and myself and our other people that love roses are just going to have to start growing something else, because we're not going to be able to grow roses in the area. It is that serious. It's interesting to know that here's some of the information that is very helpful for us in how to deal with disease, is that the virus in an infected plant will die when the plant dies. When the plant dies, the virus dies. It cannot survive outside of the plant. It's not like the virus you hear about on the doorknob that you could get 6 days later, or any of these wild things. The rose dies, the virus dies, period. So that is a good indication that if we can get rid of the roses, we can kill the rose that has the virus in it, we kill the virus. Now we still got to deal with the mite, though. The mite will quickly flee a dying rose. As soon as you cut that rose off, it is just a matter of minutes. The mite senses that the plant is starting to die. The mites will start to immediately migrate off of that rose as a survival technique, because they know that they won't be able to survive. This is another clue that we use in how do we deal with the disease. If the mite cannot find another rose within a period, and I believe I used the figure here of a week or so, it will die. The mite will die if it can't find a rose plant. That means if it's on your Bermuda grass, it's going to die. That means if it's on any other plant in that garden. If it's not a rose, that mite is going to die. That figure of a week, we're trying to be very conservative. At the University of Tennessee, Dr. Mark Windham has been dealing with this problem for many, many years. He will replant a hole where he has dug out a infected rose within 1 week. He lets the empty hole sit there a week, and he replants a rose. His virologists have told him that actually it would be safe in 3 days, but he, being cautious, overly cautious, waits 1 week, and then they replant a new rose into a hole where a diseased rose was removed. So, bottom line, the only way to kill the virus, surely, is to kill the infected rose plant. You kill the rose plant, you kill the virus with it. The surest way to kill the mite is to prevent it from finding a new rose plant. I think that leads us to the pretty logical conclusion that the way we're going to get a handle on this disease is to destroy all of the infected rose plants. No, I didn't say kill all the roses. Kill the roses that are infected with the plant. Now, although in some cases it might be that you have to take out all of the roses in a particular situation, the joker in the deck here is that you're going to have to make judgment calls a lot on this. If you take out you have a hedgerow of knockout roses with 40 roses in it, and there are 2 or 3 roses in there that look like they may not have the disease, I think it'd probably be a good idea to take them out, because they probably are already infected. One of the problems is that we do not know how long it takes for the symptoms to appear after a rose has been infected. There's all kinds of theories that it happens very rapidly. There are also, I've seen it quoted that in some cases they talk about 6 months or a year before the infection will show itself symptomatically on the plant. My experience commends me to think it happens much more rapidly than that, but I certainly have no documented proof that that is the case. So you have to be careful of a rose that just because it's not showing symptoms, that it still might be already infected with the virus. So how do we deal with Rose Rosette disease and the various types of gardens that we talked about? First, let's look at the owner-maintained private garden. Basically, it's very simple. Bag it, dig it, trash it. You want to first bag it. Sounds backwards. You want to first bag it. Remember, that mite is going to start fleeing that rose plant as soon as it is cut. It will be recognizing that it's doomed, and it will start trying to do something about that and survive. So the ideal thing is to first bag the plant. Take your plastic bag, or if you're in a city where they have the paper bags for recyclable yard debris, put the bag over the rose first. And then cut it off, then dig out the roots and put the roots into the bag. Because remember, if it's systemic, those roots are as infected as the plant above it is. And then trash it or recycle it. And here you need to really contact your city to find out what their particular regulations are on being able to dispose of these plants. Many cities will have ordinances where you can't put recyclable plant materials into the landfill, that you have to actually put the recyclable materials into recycled bags. So you have a problem there, and you need to check with your individual city and see how they want you to handle the problem. The cities of Allen, Frisco, McKinney, Plano, and Richardson, all of their collections go to Texas Pure Products grind site, which is up on Custer Road. We have been talking with and working with the people there at Texas Pure, and they have agreed that they will allow infected Rose Rosette disease plants to be brought into their site for recycling as mulch and for composting. But each individual city may have their own particular requirements. Check it out. Do not put the roses, if you're a homeowner, do not put infected Rose Rosette disease roses into your compost piles. First of all, those mites are fleeing off of that rose, and you're just leaving that source of infection in your garden there. So put it in a bag and get it off your property. Send it someplace where that mite, if the mite gets out of the bag or gets loose, it can't find a live rose to light on. If it can't find a live rose, it's going to die. Okay. This meeting today was really aimed primarily at the landscape professionals. You're the guys that actually are the frontline troops in this battle. What we've got to do is remove thousands and thousands of roses. And you're the guys that deal with roses on that kind of a scale. You deal with infected roses by the dozens or hundreds every day. And we're going to try to talk about how specifically make this as easy for you to help us accomplish this goal as we can. The principles are still basically the same. Bag it, dig it, and get rid of it. The big difference is, and we realize this, that it is not always practical on a commercial scale to bag the rose first. First of all, it's very impractical with a very large rose. Those big climbers I lost in our garden at home, I certainly couldn't bag those before I cut them down and disposed of them. The key is to when you cut the rose, try to remove it as quickly as possible to a site where the fleeing mites are not going to be able to get on adjacent roses. So don't just cut it down and leave it stacked there next to the rose garden. Haul it off to the other side of the yard at least, or get it out of the way. Also, if you're going to be taking out roses, either digging them or pulling them, then you want to, and you're not going to be able to bag them or what all, try not to do that job on a real windy day. Try to do it on as calm a day as you can to reduce the possibility of these mites blowing off of those roses and infesting the neighborhood. You can dig the plants or pull the plants. If the roses are planted in very soft soils, well improved soils, it typically may be easier to pull the plant and get most of the root system out. It is very important that you remove as much of the root system as you possibly can. Remember, that root system is infected with the disease. When you get little volunteer plants, little suckers that come up from remaining root system, those little rascals come out of the ground infected with Rose Rosette disease. The garden that was mentioned earlier that I was involved with, I was the guy that diagnosed that garden at the Collin County Community College in about 2000 with the Rose Rosette disease. We lost that whole garden because we found out later there had been roses in that same location before the Collin County put that rose garden in, and those roses had Rose Rosette disease. They were removed by the college. The root system wasn't totally removed. Some of those infected roses started coming up, and we lost 1,200 roses in that rose garden. So you do want to be observant. From a practical standpoint, you're not going to be able to get all the roses, all the roots out. And the thing that you need to do is just be observant. The name of the game with Rose Rosette disease is observation and being observant. It's watching your garden carefully and spotting it and getting rid of it as fast as you see it. If you see these little plants coming out from the root system, It's real simple to just shoot them with a little 2,4-D, kill them out, and hopefully that'll kill back into that root system too, and they won't come back a second time. If for the commercial landscaper, when you're taking your roses, if you can, when you cut them as quickly as you can to your truck or trailer, and then if you weren't able to bag the roses, at least tarp the trailer to haul it off to wherever you're going to dispose of the roses, so that you're not driving down Central Expressway, scattering mites to the four winds to infect everybody's garden on the way. Disposal, kind of reiterate a few of the things we already talked about. It should be safe to dispose of removed Rose Rosette disease roses, either in a landfill or a composting facility or a mulch producer that ages the mulch. Anybody that's going to hold that rose for at least a week or 2 weeks preferably, any virus is going to be dead, any mites are going to be dead, and that mulch product or whatever will be absolutely safe to use in mulching new beds, even new rose beds. It should be safe to haul to a single ground fresh mulch site under those same conditions. If they're going to hold the rose, the material for any length of time between when it was dug out of the garden and when it's going to actually be spread as mulch into a new garden, if that time period is going to be at least 2 weeks, it should be very safe that there's not going to be any virus or any of the mites left in that material. Remember, the virus dies when the rose dies, the mite dies in a week or so if it can't feed on a live rose. Texas Pure Products, as I mentioned, their Custer Road transfer station will accept Rose Rosette disease rose materials to be ground into mulch, and they also use it in composting. But check with your particular dump site to see what their policies might be. This was just a little disclaimer that Texas Pure asked us to show, that basically they're going on the information that Dr. Tzanetakis, myself, and Texas AgriLife have supplied them to make the decision that they will process roses that had Rose Rosette disease. Let's talk a little bit about the soil. I've run into a lot of misunderstandings about this. There is no contamination of the soil from the mite, none whatsoever. These mites do not live in the soil. They can't survive just on the soil or in the soil. So there is no contamination of the soil. Some other plant, if you're going to replace the rose with a plant other than a rose, that plant can be planted immediately into that hole, and there's absolutely no problem with doing that. The empty hole, as I mentioned with Dr. Windham's experience, he recommends that you wait a week before you replant it with a new rose. Chemical controls. There's no available product to kill or control the virus. There are miticides that are labeled to control eriophyid mites. There is no research to prove really how effective these are. The products are labeled for the mites. How effective they are, we don't know. Horticultural soaps and oils can be very effective if they are applied at the time that the mite is vulnerable. It has to not yet be burrowed in. It has to be just attaching itself to the plant and crawling around in its little 1 meter radius that it's got to try to find a suitable site to bite into the plant. So those kinds of things. Almost anything is effective against the mite if you can get it on the mite. And therein, of course, lies the big problem. Many of us that grow roses, we call ourselves Rosarians, routinely spray anyway for spider mites in the summertime. They're a big problem, particularly if we're trying to have really beautiful roses for exhibition or whatever. So we've been spraying with miticides anyway. Basically, most of the Rosarians have just switched over to using products that are labeled for the eriophyid mite. So we're hopefully having a little bit of benefit from that. Miticides are expensive, and it might not be a viable option for large gardens because, as Dr. Merchant mentioned, if you really wanted to effectively try to use a spray program, you'd have to do it at least on a bi-weekly basis because they're constantly new growth. And again, you've got to hit the mite when it's in transit from one plant to another. That's the only time it's really vulnerable. Systemics won't really do you any good because the mite is not going to get the systemic until it's burrowed in and is feeding on the plant, and by that time it's already injected the virus into the plant, and so the mite dies, big deal. The rose is already infected with the virus. Municipal gardens. Municipal gardens in the area are taking a variety of approaches to dealing with this. The city of South Lake, a while back, announced a program of routinely removing roses from all of their municipal and public gardens. That seems a little bit strong, but really that's probably not a bad approach at this particular point in time. We've got to get rid of these disease roses before we can start replanting roses and managing the disease on a manageable loss basis. The management of a municipal garden to continue to grow roses is going to require a high degree of observation and vigilance from the part of the maintenance staff. The key to the situation I referenced earlier is observation, is finding the problem fast and getting rid of it fast before it has a chance to become an epidemic. It's a lot easier to put out a forest fire when it's one little plant burning than it is to try to put out the whole darn forest once it gets going. The city of Farmers Branch here in the area has done a marvelous job of growing roses. They are becoming known as really Rose City, USA. And Pam Smith is at the meeting here today. I think she brought like 15 of her staff over here. She is managing this disease on a very logical basis. She's still growing lots of roses. She is a trial garden and a test garden for David Austin roses and for many other rose projects. And she is controlling the disease. I would highly recommend that any municipality here that wants to continue to grow roses and do it in an intelligent, managed way, contact Pam Smith. She's Director of Landscapes for the City of Farmers Branch. She's here today, and maybe you can find her somewhere. I don't see her out there. Fortunately, there's a whole lot of you out here, so it's hard to find somebody. But I would certainly suggest that you check with her. I want to thank you for becoming a part of the Rose Rosette Eradication Alliance. You may not realize it, but you're now members of the Rose Rosette Eradication Alliance. This is a big tent we got here, and we want all of you out there spreading the word. We've got to get this meeting is aimed primarily at the commercial end of it, but we hope to do these meetings in the future aimed at the individual homeowners. Together we can all do something about this disease. I invite those of you that are as passionate about roses as I am to visit our little table outside here for the Collin County Rose Society. The American Rose Society has made it possible for us today. If you join our Collin County Rose Society today at this meeting, you'll receive a free trial membership to the American Rose Society along with the copies of the American Rose magazine.